on the arrows in that box. See the default? Click on that. Right, go up and down. Okay, what do we read here?
Road Podcaster.
Click on that.
Use
okay,
device.
Down the bottom. Okay.
Bum bum bum, rum bum bum, bum bum bum, bum 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 bum, bum. There we go. Rum bum bum, ba da da rum bum bum ba dum ba ba dum. Bum 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 bum, rum bum bum, bum 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 ba dum bum bum bum, bum bum bum, ba da da rum bum bum ba dum ba ba dum. Hello, my friends. Hi from Texas. And yeah, now you can hear me, right? You can hear me now. Good job, Perry and Joette. You fixed it, says Pamela. It's great to see everyone tonight. Now you can see me and hear me, and everything is moving along just as it should. And we have Dr. Samuel Hahnemann with us tonight, as we have. And I borrowed his beret tonight. I thought I'd wear it for a little while because it's kind of an inside joke with those in my academy, because a big part of what Dr. Hahnemann did that was particularly valuable was when he lived in Paris. Someday we'll get to it. I'll talk to you about it some Monday night. But until then, I just thought I'd have a little fun, and I'm going to put his cap back on him, and I will tell you that tonight is Monday, and every Monday night at 8 o'clock Eastern Time, we do one thing and one thing only, and that is we study homeopathy, don't we? I'm here to teach you that. My name is Joette Calabrese, and I'm here every Monday night for those of you who don't know me. But for those who do know me, hello, my friends. It's so wonderful to see you. It is so good to see everyone joining. We are on Facebook and Pinterest and Instagram and YouTube and, of course, my mighties, my dear mighties. It's so wonderful to see you all here tonight. I see that, we had a little unsure footing to get started, but tonight we're going to talk about poison ivy. It's an important subject at this time of year. Where we raised our kids, we had no poison ivy. We lived on a hilltop just south of Buffalo. And I was told by a family who had lived there for generations, and they were the professional landscapers and gardeners for that area, and they were farmers themselves, etc. And they told me there was absolutely no poison ivy on this hill, which was really great to know. But now I live in an area, I have a cottage in an area that we come to in the summer. And indeed, there is poison ivy, and it's on our property. So what do you think I should do? What should I do? Well, of course, we want to try to get rid of it. I'm not going to use pesticides. I'm not going to do that. Perry uses salt and really, really strong vinegar and pours it over that and pulls it up by the roots early on. Although it's, it goes underground, of course, but at least you can get rid of a good amount of it so it doesn't carry on and become very obvious. So that's one of the things we do. But the next thing that we need to do is if we have poison ivy near us or we are sensitive to poison ivy, we must prepare. We must know what medicines to use, how to use them, and we must own them, my friends. It's the only way. And I'm not going to tell you that homeopathy fixes everything. It has, as Dr. Prasanta Banerjee once said to me, he said to tell your students and your clients and your followers that homeopathy has cured every human disease. But not every person with that disease will be cured. And so we also have different degrees of cure. So what I'm saying is that poison ivy can be very intense for some people. In fact, for those who are very, very sensitive, it can be even, if someone happens to be allergic to it, can even cause breathing problems. And so it can be perhaps it got into the system, not into the system, of course it goes into the system, may have gotten into the respiratory tract. And that is when it can certainly be quite dangerous. More often than not, it isn't. So this is what I did. I have this little booklet, written by Joel Kreisberg, Kreisberg. And I'm going to read a little bit from that, and I'm also going to show you what I found in my repertory. Leaves of 3, let it be. Berries white, take flight. And I love these statements. Harry Vine is no friend of mine. So the first time that we have written information about poison ivy was from John Smith. Isn't that interesting? Back in, when was that? 1600s. I love that information. I think it's particularly Captain John Smith in the early 1600s. And then early botanists named the plant Rhus toxicodendron. Rhus, R-H-U-S, toxicodendron. Toxicodendron. Rhus toxicodendron, otherwise known as Rhus tox. Yes, Rhus tox. That's exactly how it's one of our great medicines, one of our great homeopathic medicines. Now, let me also say that most people think if you get poison ivy, you use homeopathic poison ivy, Rhus tox, right? That's what everyone thinks automatically. But what is homeopathy, my friends? What is the meaning of the word? Homeo, similar, pathy, illness or disease. Similar disease. It's not exact disease. That would be isopathy. So it's not, we don't necessarily use exactly the plant that caused the condition. It seems like it would be so lovely if that were the case. Now, there's a little caveat with that, and I'll explain it in a moment. But what we're looking for is something that causes symptoms that are similar to what the person is experiencing at the moment. But let's go a little further. First, I want to say that when we use these homeopathic medicines, some cases are very severe, and other cases, of course, are not. So, but when we first get it, it's a very good idea to use whatever medicine that you choose. And I'm going to be talking about I think I'm going to talk about 6 of them, I think I've got written here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, 5 remedies that you need to own. And they are used pretty much all in the same fashion. That means that we're going to be using it in a 30 or 200 potency, and in the very beginning, at the onset of the infection. And yes, it is an infection. It's something we're going to use about every 15 minutes for the first hour and hope to get some relief. And from there, we see how the person feels. The thing about homeopathy is we don't just take that and it's done. We really, especially for an acute like this, we want to observe, because as the person is being given the homeopathic medicines, things change. And we want to know what those changes are. And then we may adjust accordingly. So the person's symptoms change, we change. And we adjust to perhaps a different medicine, or perhaps even the same medicine, using it less frequently or a little bit more frequently. So generally, I use a 30 or a 200. Once in a while, I use it in even a higher potency if the intensity is absolutely over the top. Now, the more you treat using homeopathy, the more you realize that most things are not over the top. And you need to know that. Because if you believe that every incident is over the top because you're worried, you will treat incorrectly. You have to adjust according to and moderate according to and work with the person according to reality, not what your fear that what may or may not happen. So that is very important, and it's particularly important in treating something like poison ivy. I should tell you that children are more susceptible to poison ivy than adults are. But most adults, and it's close to 90% of adults, are affected by it. And in some who are super sensitive, it could take only the amount that would sit on a pinhead for the person to be exposed. And it does not even need to be an exposure that is directly on the skin. It could be in the air. It could be burning, with someone burning poison ivy. That's the worst. If people consider, I know that some people say, well, we'll just burn it. I don't know that I would do that. That can be pretty darned serious. So about 90%. All right, what else did I wanted to get this off to you. I think it's there's a lot of great stuff here. There is also some information on how it is worse when the person is hot, or it's hot outside, and they've perspired. I don't know if that means that it's because it's absorbed more readily into the skin. You would think that the perspiration would wick it away, but that's not necessarily so. And this is another aspect that I want you to understand. You need to know that it doesn't have to touch the skin at a certain place in order for that place to be eruptive. In other words, the person may brush against it with their hand, and then it shows up on their stomach. Or they sit in it by accident, and their ankles have touched it, and indeed their ankles may show pustules, and that's where the rash develops. That's where the infection is concentrated. But then it goes to their face, or behind their ears, or on their scalp, etc. And most people think that means it must have been touched. Not necessarily so. This is an infection, and it does go through the system in a systemic fashion. And that, my friends, is important to know, because that's what's going to give you the key as to which medicines to use. What is the key? The fact that it shows up at different parts of the body, and when it shows up, and where it shows up, and how it shows up is what's going to tell you which homeopathic medicine is best chosen. Okay. Let's see. I've got some more information here. This is something that I think is very important for you to know. I've worked with people in the past, over the years, who have had severe sensitivity to poison ivy, and so I've suggested to them that before poison ivy comes out, say early spring, they start taking Rhus tox. Now, this is the made from the very plant. Take Rhus tox, either a 30, a 200, or a 1 once a month for, say, 3-4 months. So if it's early spring, let's say it's March, April, May, June, and that's just around the time poison ivy starts to show up in most areas, is June. So if you can start doing that, and you do that, one does that every year, it helps often, not always, nothing is 100%, there's no such thing. It often subdues the sensitivity to the plant and the poison of the plant. Over the years, if someone does it every year, and especially the year that they've started doing it, they might see that it could be a much easier year for them. So, Rhus toxicodendron, in a 30 or a 200 or a 1 one dose every month. 1 dose every month. All righty. So, I'm going to go to my Robin Murphy's Materia Medica here, and I'm going to show you what I found. I mean, I know about this. I've looked at this many times. And this is, I'm looking under the clinicals or generals, and it's under poison. Yes, what kind of poison? Oak or poison ivy. Rhus poisoning. And I will point out to you exactly what the medicines are that are listed here, and how we I can help you differentiate. So I'm going to point it out right here, okay, and I'm going to try to bring it up close enough. My camera's pretty far. I don't know if you can see that. It's over there. Right there. You see those remedies? Rhus tox is bold and underlined. It's about the third from the bottom line. And then on the top, you can see anacardium, bryonia, etc., etc. Rhus tox is the only one that is bold and underlined. And I think that is where people get the idea that we need to use Rhus tox anytime anyone has poison ivy. And I'm not going to tell you not to use it, but I have found in my experience, and I don't know exactly why this is, that it's not the first medicine that acts. Not the one, maybe that's not the way I want to put it. It's not the medicine that I find acts the most beneficially in the largest number of cases. That's what I want to say. I find that the remedy that is most often useful for the largest number of people is anacardium. 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 And indeed, it is in our repertory here. It's bold also and capitalized. Not underlined, but still bold and capitalized. And we use our repertory as a guidepost. Our repertory can be very useful for giving us a direction. It's not an absolute. It's a good direction. And so that's the way I'm looking at it here. I believe anacardium, at least in my experience, and I'm not telling you that it's the only way to go, but anacardium orientale is the second word, orientale. Anacardium orientale. Now, why that one? Why is that one so valuable? Well, when you look at anacardium in your materia medica and you read up on it, it has intense itching. Now, be careful. Again, I'm going to tell you, be very thoughtful in how this is described by either you or the person that you're treating. Yes, it's very itchy, but is it horrendously itchy, beyond comprehension itchy, intensely? That's anacardium. All of the other medicines that we can choose from also have itching, but this is the most intense of all of them. And the other reason that I've often chosen anacardium, is because it presents pretty much on the entire body. I don't mean that the one person is covered completely in it. I mean one person they can all be in this, maybe 5 people in a patch of poison ivy, and they can have the poison ivy on their face, or on their arms, or on their abdomen, or their thighs, or in the axillary, or on the throat, or the chest, etc. Anacardium covers a lot of areas of the body. And what I mean by that, again, is, just to make that clear, it's not found on the scalp generally, or the palms of the hands, or the bottoms of the feet. It's all the other areas that I just suggested, which are common areas in Rhus poisoning. But it's particularly valuable when it's around the throat. So if someone has poison ivy and it's around the throat especially, and the itching is intense, and let me add one more thing, there is a yellow or transparent oozing from the pustules, then I would use anacardium orientale, either 30 or 200. More likely, if it's extremely intensely itching, I might actually go with the 200. Every 15 minutes for the first hour, and then from there, we see how the person acts. Not just the itching. We want to see their shoulders start to drop. We want to see that they're starting to relax a little bit. They're not as intense. The itching is not as maddening. Then you know, those are indications, my friends, that things are moving in the right direction. If someone is moving in the right direction with poison ivy, it means that something's made a change. What made the change? The medicine. If there is no change, we might try it for several more hours. If there's still no shift, now we're going to say, okay, now what's happening? And if we see that what happens next is, for example, the person is restless, they can't sit still, they're pacing, the itching, the intensity, oh my gosh, they feel so awful, they're just so uncomfortable, and all they want to do is get into a hot, not usually warm, but hot, near scalding shower. It's the only thing that gives them relief, even if it's only short term. That, my friends, is the indication that the medicine that should be considered now, or perhaps even at the onset, and perhaps even have skipped over anacardium because of the symptoms that I'm giving you now, we would instead use Rhus toxicodendron. The itching is also accompanied by burning. That is, it's a specific kind of burn that people who need Rhus tox suffer. And it's like a fire. It's not burning like a sunburn. It's not, it's as though there is fire against the skin. So itching better after near scalding water. That is really going to be a key. Restlessness and that burning like fire with the itching, of course. Okay, now we've got two remedies, anacardium and, one more thing I want to tell you about Rhus tox. Rhus tox often presents in the genitalia area. Who would think? The person had clothes on, they were covered, but it shows up there. And it can also show up on the hands, often the palms of the hands with many blisters, and the face, especially around the eyes, but the face. In fact, actually the whole head. And the eyes, the face, the whole head, and palms of hands, genitalia. You see how we're differentiating how important it is that you look at what's happening. Now, if we used anacardium orientale first, and it sort of helped, but now it stopped, or it didn't help, we can then move that aside after we've given it its due, move it aside, and then go to the next medicine that seems to fit the picture. And these can be subtleties, my friends. Don't assume that what the person was suffering earlier that day, that they're still suffering from it now. You need more. This is bedside prescribing. This is the kind of prescribing that we need to know. We need to be observing even more important than asking questions. Okay, that's two medicines that we could consider, okay? Now let's look at another one that I think is really valuable, and those of you who have taken my skin course, well, you're going to know these remedies anyway from the skin course, is graphites. Looks like graphites, but I pronounce it graphites. I believe that's the correct pronunciation. And graphites has symptoms where the location is behind the ears and the face, and especially the scalp. It might even be just the beginning of the scalp, but it is the scalp. The groin is also considered any part of the legs, all parts of the legs, and the joints of the knees, the ankles, etc. So if you're starting to see these eruptions coming in these areas, in spite of where that person got it originally, let me also say parenthetically that once the pustule forms, the fluid is not infectious. In other words, it will not, if the pustule opens, it will not then exude and create more rash, more pustules on that person or someone else. That's not the way it's transmitted. Of course, it is transmitted from your dog that might roll in it and then you hug the dog. It could be transmitted from a spade if you've used a spade that had been used in a patch of poison ivy. That is when it's transmitted, but not once the pustules form. Graphites. There is a sticky, honey-colored, honey-like substance that exudes from the pustules of someone who needs graphites. Graphites, a great medicine, a medicine that's often underutilized It's one of our more important remedies for many skin conditions, many different kinds of skin conditions, psoriasis, eczema. I'm trying to think of others, but many others. All righty. So let's go on. Let's see some questions. A guy friend of mine in college was weed eating and had his shirt off, hit a patch of poison ivy. He had intense itching over his whole chest to the point he scratched and had scarring from it. I felt terrible for him. Yeah, you bet. That's awful. I've heard, says Francine, to take Roostox 1M weekly for 1 month before the session starts. That's another way to do it. Yes, Francine, I have also used it that way. I should have mentioned that earlier. I like it once a month. But also, let's say you don't think of it early. You don't think of it first thing in the spring. By all means, 1M is another way to do it. Once a week for a month. Yes. Yes. I might even go a little bit longer than just 1 month. I might go 2 or 3 months if possible. I used to scald my rash for relief, says Shelley. That often, not 100%, but it often indicates the need for Roostox. Yeah, everyone, I know you were saying that if it's, wow, I suffered as a kid and always thought my scratching the pustules open made it spread. Okay, let's see what else we've got. Even after being exposed to it as a child, I got my first case in my 50s. I gave my husband, says Anne, Roostox 30 twice a day for his rusty gait, meaning joints and aching joints, not having anything to do with actual poison ivy at this point, and because he was very susceptible to poison ivy. And after many months of taking Roostox, I realized it rooted out his allergy to poison ivy. That's exactly right. That's exactly how this works. So Roostox is also one of our grand, very important medicines for joint pain, arthritis. I take it myself from time to time. It is one of our best medicines. We have a couple more medicines. Another one is Crotontiglium, great name. And the last one is sulfur. Sulfur is one of those great polycrests, one of those medicines that is particularly valuable for the skin. I'm going to go to that one because people know that one. That is when the roost poisoning causes swelling of the face. There's the poison ivy erupts on the scalp. There is burning. There's restlessness. They scratch until they bleed. Now, you might say, well, that's awfully intense. How do we compare that sulfur picture, to anacardium that has the very, very intense itching? Well, there is still, you can scratch until you bleed, and then it also can be very uncomfortable, but intense itching is when someone really feels as though they're going to go out of their mind. My son, where'd it go, has an auto sensitivity reaction according to a dermatologist. That's itchy, but not overkill. Worst on legs, but random spots appearing. Autosensitivity. I'm sorry. That's quite an explanation. I would say there's something else going on. Yes, I'd keep these medicines in mind for poison. Parsnip too, although it is sunlight activated, so maybe a better remedy is a remedy arsenal is more effective. If a remedy seems to give the best healing response during treatment of a yearly chronic episode of poison ivy, could you use that specific remedy as a prophylactic before spring the next year? I don't know that I would go that route. I'm not saying you're doing the wrong thinking here. It is a very good point. I would get that thinking and put it in my hip pocket. And instead, I would start with the Roostox as the prophylactic, in spite of the fact that perhaps anacardium did the good work the year before. But I'd have it available just in case. And then, if you find that it does indeed act, and that the Roostox using Roostox as a prophylactic didn't help, and then the next year you tried anacardium because it had worked previously, I want to know. Let me know. Yeah, they're all the same, my friends. What potency for graphites? I generally use graphites in a 200. But you could use it in a 32. I really look at this as the more severe the symptoms, the longer lasting the condition, the more likely you're going to go a little bit higher potency, such as a 200. And let me also say that once the person gets onto steroids or drugs, just fold. Really, I wouldn't even bother trying. Once someone is on steroids, there's no way of knowing what you're dealing with. You can't tell whether or not it's the steroids that are helping with the improvement, and of course, steroids do make people feel better in the short run. In the long run, they are, shall I say, problematic. But if somebody's already started, let them just stay with that method. If they come to you first, or if it's you, then by all means take advantage of this great information. Would you use 1M potencies for poison ivy? Yes, I would. Absolutely, I would. Are these remedies just for poison ivy or for other rashes? No, these are for poison ivy, poison oak. That's what I'm talking about tonight. There are many different kinds of other rashes, and these remedies, there is a crossover. You'll see sulfur, you'll see graphites, you'll see anacardium, you'll see rhus tox. They're all, rhus tox also happens to be a great medicine for chicken pox, etc. But no, this is specifically tonight on this condition. Great questions. Love having you here. I'm sorry I couldn't get to them all. I do have to dash off. I have a Gateway to Homeopathy study group I'm meeting with now. And my friends, if you have interest in learning more, join a study group. Just go to Joette's Learning Center, JOETTES, no apostrophe, joetteslearningcenter.com. Scroll through, look at my courses, consider them. If you're new to this, do consider joining a Gateway to Homeopathy study group. And if you don't know how to go about doing it, just contact my office. Eileen is amazing. She's always there to help people. And so with that, I say God bless you all. Mwah. Have a great night. See you next week. Bye now.
With our homeopathic protocols, you learn your remedies. My family needs me, so I must know our remedies. How much to take, how often to treat, and when to stop, and when to repeat. With our homeopathic protocols, you learn your remedies. Athuzanodary, it's elementary with arnica head, arsenicum fed, spigelia slither, orms from wither, no more. My family needs me, so I improve my memory. Not only the rems, but how often to treat, and when to stop, and when to repeat. With your homeopathic protocols, learn your remedies. Belisol red and arnica head, drosera bark, ignatia dark, source of frigid and cuprum to rigid, and crude itches, calica bonicum, let it melt on your gum, bovis to wheat are some great ways to treat ya. La 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 la, homeopathic protocols, learn your remedies.